Trent, Condon, LeShun Daniels with you on today's Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Iowa is facing nationwide criticism of nepotism inside the program. Can Kirk Ferentz work to fix it? The run game certainly needs fixing. We talked to LeShun about some ideas that can be done, and zone blocking. Is the scheme dead in college football? And Iowa needs 3 victories to get to bowl eligibility. Where will those 3 victories come from? And would missing a bowl game, would that be a good thing for this Iowa football program? All today on Locked On Hawkeyes.
Our Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back once again to the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. I'm Trent Condon. That's LeShun Daniels as we talk Hawkeyes here with you. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen each and every day. This episode of Locked On Hawkeyes brought to you by Sling TV. Don't miss this week's matchup as Iowa gets ready to face off against Northwestern right on Sling TV. Sling TV, the TV you love at the price that you'll love. Try it today as you can find the matchup on ESPN2. Well, LeShun, as we get ready for things going on here this weekend, we look back to what happened over the weekend past, and boy, frustration abounds as Iowa falls 54-10 to Ohio State. Unfortunately, it's something that we both saw coming, I think, but that fashion. The defense played lights out for long stretches of the game, really slowed down that high-powered Ohio State offense, but the defense, well, I don't know how much we'll talk about that. It's going to be about the offense. No offensive touchdowns. How about this? 28 straight possessions now for the Hawkeyes without a touchdown. Something seemingly unthinkable, yet here we are today.
Yeah, it was a overall just tough watch on Saturday. Obviously, the talent disparity, right? It is what it is, but just overall, kind of just the performance from the offensive side of the ball was just very, very disappointing. So
it really was, and you look at the numbers, they jump off the page to you. They tried at halftime to bring in Alex Padilla. We got our first look at him so far this season. It didn't go well. He fumbles the first snap of the game. Third play, tip ball, intercepted. So 2 turnovers in 3 plays when he came into the game. But at that point, I mean, the game was over. And you know what might have helped? I don't know. Like, I never played quarterback at the Division I level. I played it at the high school level. I'll tell you, maybe taking a snap before Game 7 of the year, not doing it in front of 105,000 people. I don't know. Maybe that would have helped him out there that he doesn't fumble away the first snap. Hey, that's a simple play. You still got to make that play. I get it. But you know how frustrated I am, LeShun. I'm sure it's frustrating watching it as a former Hawkeye player, watching this thing just continue to crater and getting worse and worse. And now we have the nationwide criticism that continues here after the game. Doug Lemaire, who longtime columnist in Cleveland, Cleveland.com, and the Plain Dealer guy, I'm sure you probably read many articles of growing up and followed the Buckeyes for a long time before he started in the columnist route. He went to the press conference. He asked a lot of tough questions of Kirk Ferentz. He went to Gary Barden, asked the question. So there was certainly a lot there. It's unfortunate it took a media member from outside the program to ask these questions. But now I put it this way. We know what it is, right? We know that obviously having a son there, how difficult this can be when things go bad, and it's going bad right now. Can Kirk Ferentz fix it? You know Kirk incredibly well. You've seen him evolve. You were there during the last evolution as things changed going into 2015. So you've been a part of it. Can he do it again?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. I mean, Coach Ferentz has obviously had his back against the wall multiple times, right, throughout his tenure here at Iowa. And every time, right, he's battled back, right, and performed exceptionally well, really, that following season and, for several years after that, right? It's almost like routine at this point. But right now, obviously, it's tough, right? I don't think he hasn't been in a situation kind of where he's at right now, right? Where, you come off of a Big Ten West title, right? And then now you're moving into, the following year when, again, you have your son as your offensive coordinator. You have a quarterback who has struggled, really his time starting quarterback for the Hawks, and now because your offense hasn't been able to advance and really help your defense and play complementary football, now it's like all the type of criticism is coming from every which way direction, right? Because again, like it's tough. It's definitely has Coach Ferentz in a tough spot, especially when you have your son as your offensive coordinator, right? When it's in the family, right? It just makes that entire situation so much more difficult, right? I'm glad that I'm not the one that's in that position right now, because like obviously, right, you've got to do what's best for your family, right? You never want to throw family or anything like that like under the bus, right? And really kind of cast them off wayside. But then again, you also have an obligation and a duty, right? Obviously, to the team, the university, the fans. Obviously, make sure that you're putting together a product. So come Saturdays, right? It's representative what everyone stands for and the type of play that you want to see on Saturdays. And fortunately, right, we haven't been getting that this year. And again, it ends up falling back obviously on the head coach's shoulders, because at the end of the day, right, he's the one who ultimately chooses his staff, right, and puts those people in the places where he puts them. So it's a $1 million question. See if he can bounce back, right? It's going to take obviously a lot of soul searching from him, other coaches, basically everyone in the building. Like, is this how we want this ship to go down, or are we going to make some changes, moving forward?
So I want to kind of go back to that last evolution that we saw. 2014 ended with the loss in the Gator Bowl to Tennessee. Just a bad one. Jonathan Parker making the play. JP tried to throw that football in the end zone. The game before the end of the regular season against Nebraska, let a big lead slip away there. Kirk in the post-game press conference just comes up with the "that's football." And a lot of people just really didn't like that response. Afterwards, the football program, they hired their own public relations firm. There was a lot to be done, but there was obviously a lot to be done, most importantly, with the football program. I know you guys changed your practice schedule at the time. What else was happening inside the football program, though? Talk about what was changing, what kind of changes you saw as you guys, as Kirk, I think, realized that things needed to be different, not for media guys like me and the way that he talks to the media, things like that, but the tangible things that you guys were doing inside the football offices and on the practice field. What made things different going into 2015?
Yeah. So for starters, like that bowl prep season like sucked. That was probably the worst. That was probably by far the worst by the time when I was there. It was essentially like they took spring practice and mixed it with fall camp, and that was our bowl prep that year. Like we were literally like every single day, like we were hitting, knocking heads, like it was literally every single day. Like I'm not gonna say he couldn't have cared less like what happened in the bowl game, but it was some things like in the building, right? I think that he was trying to weed out, right? Get in everyone to honestly have some more accountability and how the direction that the program is going, right? All the way from players to coaches, right? And really trying to get that Iowa way kind of back in the building, right? And obviously we saw that the following season, right? I mean, guys stepping up when numbers were called, right? Seeing that smart, tough, that physical football basically all the way throughout that football season. So, and obviously a bunch of players, starting to take accountability for actions that are happening on and off the field, right? I think that was a big thing for us and the entire 2015 team, and all that stuff put together really allowed us to come together as a team. So when the season got started, right, and then we're starting to get wins and we're winning these close games, it all kind of fall back on the work that we put in, really starting from that 2014 bowl prep for the Tax Slayer Bowl and then beyond, right? It would end up being a lot of type of accountability on the players, right? Trying to figure out what is that Iowa way, what does Iowa football really look like, and it all ended up falling back on being that smart, that tough, that physical football team. And a bunch of us, really the entire team, kind of took that and ran with it. And obviously it showed on Saturdays come 2015 season.
We talked a lot of big picture stuff. We'll continue. We're going to talk a little bit more here about the Ohio State game and look back the run game, the fixing that we've talked about a lot here, zone blocking. We've talked about it throughout the season. I'm at a point now where I wonder it's untenable. Those things, the changes that you went through, LeShun, at the time in the football program went through. I don't want to say they're cosmetic, but it was more kind of some stylistic kind of things. It feels like this thing needs a complete overhaul. We're going to do that as we continue here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Well, LeShun, we have our partners at Nissan right now working with us to create a new segment across the Locked On College Network titled Thrilling Moments. We're going to highlight the most exciting plays from the Hawkeyes game this weekend or throughout history. This week's thrilling moment came early in the game for the Hawkeyes as they got it done early in the football game with the defense. Of course, the scoop and score into the end zone. Joey the Bull, Joe Evans gets in there. Great play on C.J. Stroud. That defense played absolutely lights out. And for a moment, I took a screen grab of it. I took a picture of my TV as the Hawkeyes were up in the game 7-3 there. Other than that, not a whole lot of thrilling moments, but we had it at least early on as that defense was playing lights out. This segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at nissanusa.com. All right, LeShun, we continue here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast, and Iowa 54-10, the final against Ohio State. So first, an overview of things. You come out after the bye week. Yes, Ohio State was also on a bye week, but you're hoping, all right, they're going to adapt. We're going to see some wrinkles. We talked about a few things. Last time you guys went out to Columbus in 2013, saw the 3 tight end set that you guys utilized. So you're waiting for something. First play of the game, Spencer rolling left, which is a dead play. He just does not have the requisite athletic ability to make that play. Again, that play for a right-handed quarterback is so difficult. Again, for somebody that played low-level quarterback, I understand. Getting your hips there, getting your footwork right, getting everything there. For a guy that lacks athleticism, it's a difficult play, and we've seen that now throughout his 3-year career. You come with that, and then he throws it right to a safety, just sitting there, just sitting in coverage, just like, oh, boy. Here we go again. It went from bad for worse. Petras had another bad play in the game. It was just so frustrating that is what you come up with out of a bye week, doing.
Yeah, it's definitely was not the ideal start to a game, especially coming out of a bye week, right? Like, you would think going into a football game like that, right, you're going to at the very least, try to play to the strengths of your football team. And right now, obviously, offensively, we don't really know where that is right now at the moment, right? It seems like there is no true strength or identity right now offensively, right? And it's really been like that for the past over a year, to be honest, right? That's what it feels like at this point, right? It's been there really is no true identity, and we've obviously have gotten away from a bunch of the things that we've done well. And obviously it's not just one part of the offense, right? It's not just the quarterback, right? It's not just the receivers, the offensive line, or offensive coordinator, right? It's all that in tandem with each other. And right now it's like it's an Iowa football offense that has no identity. And again, they're still trying to find it, and it's frustrating to see from a fan perspective, and I'm sure the players are frustrated too. Right? That you come out the bye week, you spent all that time preparing and try to get your bodies back in these things, and then you come out and play like that offensively is very, very frustrating.
It was a game plan that wasn't going to work against this Ohio State team. It's a run game that just feels like it has no chance. So you watch the offensive line. One thing that I've heard from a few people that certainly know line play a little bit better than I do, LeShun, is that it's not just schematically. It's just guys missing blocks. It's missing, finding out some of the simple things that you need to do in the zone blocking scheme. I've told you my theory here at this point. I just think that the zone blocking scheme, with the way that Iowa runs it, it doesn't work anymore in college football. You can't cut block. You can't do the same level that it worked so well in the past. And Kirk's unwillingness to adapt and change with it has just set this offense back so far. And this is what you're left at right here. You've talked about it before, but let's go a little bit deeper here. When you look at this run game, what they're trying to do, yes, it's a young offensive line, but boy, do you look at it and say you just can't win with this scheme anymore? You can't run the football effectively game in and game out trying to run this system anymore. Are you there yet?
So, so there's a couple. There's really two big areas that I'm looking at when it comes to the Iowa football run game right now, and the second one may or may not be a little controversial, but we'll get to that in a second. So, for starters, right, um, when you're watching these other teams around college football or around the NFL, the biggest thing when teams have successful run games is that the defense is essentially forced to, guard the entire field. So what do I mean by that? So for starters, right, you look in college football, a lot of teams that have successful run games, they typically will have a quarterback that is able to run the football, right? So when they are running, zone schemes, right, they have that read option ability, right? So they have the ability for the quarterback to obviously keep the ball and run with the football. And why does that help your offensive line? Because one, you're typically leaving a guy unblocked, right? So you're leaving a guy unblocked, right? So you're essentially taking him out of the play. And second, you increase the numbers to the play side of the run play, right? So if we're not blocking the defensive end, right, we're running a zone read scheme, I hand it off, right, because the defensive end decides to stay home, those offensive linemen can climb up they can get double teams on the interior linemen, they can move up, get up and get more to those linebackers more successfully. And then if they're just crashing down, right, quarterback can keep it and run and do whatever, right? And then you look in the NFL, even successful teams like like the Ravens or like the Eagles, right? They have the ability to run football with their quarterbacks, but also a bunch of teams, they have the pass options to have to run plays as well, right? I mean, just last night with the Steelers and the Dolphins, early on in that football game, Tua he snapped the football, right? Realized he has a matchup on the receiver for a run play, right? Throws the ball out there, right? And essentially that becomes that run play, right? Now, the defense has to respect that. They can't necessarily just always fly to wherever run the football, right? So what that looks like in Iowa football terms is, hey, like we've got to do different things when it comes to running the football. Obviously, if we're under center, right, you've got to be able to either throw some bubble screens, kind of stretch the field a little bit so teams can't just kind of crowd in on the inside of the box, right, and make those plays. And another thing with the zone run scheme is that you really do have to have people movers on the inside of your offensive line, right? Because especially if you're running inside zone, because you got to get on those double teams, you got to displace these D linemen vertically, and then you've got to get up to linebackers as well, right? And right now we're not able to do that. That's part of the reason why on Saturday we had a little bit more success running the outside zone plays, just because you don't necessarily have to move the defensive lineman as much, because now you're kind of running these guys laterally side to side, and then the back can easily choose the hole to stick their foot in the ground and get some positive yards. So let's see, right now, if I'm looking at a run scheme, right, you might want to change up a few different things, and they do it a little bit, but I feel like we got to do it a little bit more, whether we go back to, doing like single back power plays, or we're running pin and pull run schemes, right, or running counter plays, right, just things to use the already built-in leverage based on our formations to make it easier for our offensive linemen to block, versus just having them, hey, line up, head up on these guys, and move these guys vertically. And the second piece, and it kind of ties into that a little bit, is that, so I don't want to necessarily call the offensive linemen like soft, because obviously they're not soft, but right now there really is no physicality at all, right? When it comes to the guys up front, right? I feel like it's something that's been missing all year. Like there's no kind of like nastiness, right, to offensive line that I'm seeing right now. Like obviously, like last year, right, like Tyler held it down for the offensive line, always had nasty finishes, finishing through the whistle, all these different things. Right now we're just not seeing that, right? And obviously, I know the offensive line is young, and they're still obviously developing, but a bunch of these guys, there's still a ton of starts under their belt, right? And at some point, that mindset shift has to happen, right? Where you got to bring that nastiness, out of you, right? Especially knowing how we run the football and how we play our brand of football, right? If you look at a bunch of successful teams in Iowa's past that were able to run the football successfully, right? Like that was something that these offensive lines had, and it showed up on tape every single Saturday, even when we were going against teams that may have been more talented or better, right? Right now, I feel like that's something that's really been missing up front, and I'm hoping that that's something that can be changed. And I feel like obviously that will help the offense, as a whole.
Oh, that's really good stuff there, LeShun, and a really good breakdown of this run game and what possibly can happen. The depth chart comes out today, listed either or for the quarterback spot between Spencer Petras and Alex Padilla. We know Padilla can give you a little more of that run element, something we'll talk about certainly here throughout the week. Want to say thank you for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen today. For your second listen today, check on Locked On Sports Today for the games that matter. For the most and biggest stories in all of sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights on Locked On that they can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. LeShun, when we come back, Iowa sits at 3-4. They need 3 more victories for bowl eligibility. Kirk Ferentz says there is no such thing as a bad bowl game. Well, if they get to one this year, that one might be put to the test. We'll talk about that. Can Iowa get to 3 victories as we continue on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast? Pam, she'd hide in her office bathroom every 30 minutes to dry off her armpits so no one would see the wet circles under her arms. She finally has her life back because of Sweat Block. Pam was able to fix her problem. Try Sweat Block. Save 20% with promo code Locked On at sweatblock.com. Again, 20% with promo code Locked On at sweatblock.com. Also available on Amazon. All right, LeShun, let's finish things up here and a look at the bowl game possibilities for the Hawkeyes. Iowa needs to get 3 more victories to get to 6 and get bowl eligibility. Obviously, this week with Northwestern, huge opportunity there. Iowa's favored by 11 points in the game. Northwestern stinks. Iowa stinks too. I don't know if you saw this. My friends out at Circa, they put out the first college lines every week, and their opening line had Iowa favored by 9. They're up to an 11-point favorite now. They had the total at 31.5 yesterday when it came out. No, it's already been bet up to 36, but oh boy, that was an absolute shocker for me. Obviously, if I was going to get to a bowl game, feels like you have to win this game at very minimum, and then find 2 more wins here. But I want to go more big picture. Yeah, you beat Iowa, or Northwestern, excuse me, Nebraska, maybe beat Wisconsin, Minnesota, I don't know, whatever it is, whatever combination. You talked about after 2014. It was a lot of work about you guys yourselves and a lot of physicality going into bowl prep. Bowl prep, it's important. We know that. You get 15 extra practices. But with a program that feels like it needs a big reset, and maybe the motivation by Kirk comes not making a bowl game, could you make an argument that maybe missing a bowl game might be better for long term of the program, the big picture, or is that just a little too short-sighted in my viewpoint?
Yeah. So, um, in my opinion, I would say no, just because because we miss out on those practices, right? Like I feel like that's the thing right now, and obviously this has been a huge topic of conversation, the entire year, right? Practice, 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 all this stuff, right? But I think that's something that, at least on the offensive side of the ball, that we can't do without, right? Like getting those practices is something that we need, right? Obviously, there's a lot of young guys that are playing right now, that have to continue to develop and get better, right? As a whole, so having those practices is going to be important for us as a program, right? Like the bowl game, like regardless of what the bowl game is, like at this point, like that really doesn't matter, right? Like yeah, it's important, right? Like you obviously want to have some kind of reward for end of the season, but the goals that we were trying to reach at this point are essentially off the table, right? I
Mhm.
think there still is outside chance, to obviously make it Big Ten title game, but we obviously know the type of um, team that we're at right now, right? Like it's really not feasible, at least at this time. So getting to a bowl game and having those additional practices, even if we finish at 6-6, right? Like that's going to be important for our guys to have, just because there's a lot of work that needs to be done, not only from a player standpoint, but also from a coaching standpoint as well, right? Like the coaches know that they have to be better, the players know that they have to be better, right? Like it's very, very rare where you feel like we're getting out coached at times, but it seems like it's starting to really be that way, during this year and even at times last year, right? So that extra time and extra practice is going to be very important for the players and the coaches and everyone as a whole.
Just the way that I look at it is Kirk 67, he's going to need a push. He's going to need a push to really, if this thing is going to be changed completely offensively, if they're going to break it down to build it back up and move past his way of thinking offensively, I just think that they got to bottom out. I mean, this thing's got a crater. They got to be 4-8 this season. It's got to be that ugly, and he's going to have to make those tough decisions. And missing a bowl game, I think, if this thing's going to get turned around and they can become an elite level program again, get back to level. I know they played for a championship last year, but we saw the offense last year. You're not competing for a championship in any other environment. Next year is going to be the final year of the Big Ten West. And then after that, you're back with the big boys. And now you've got 16 teams, 15 other teams you're competing with, and the top two get to the conference championship game. There's no more, we just got to beat Purdue, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota. No, there's no more of that. You got to compete with Penn State and Michigan and Ohio State, and now USC and UCLA to get there. And because of that, I'm not rooting for them to lose games. But if it's going to be turned around, that's where I am right now. I get the practices. I know the importance. And, if they get in at 6-6 and they got to go to Detroit the day after Christmas, woof. Kirk, let's say there's no such thing as a bad bowl game. Well, let's see if put lipstick on that pig. Yuck.
Yeah, if they end up in Detroit, yeah, I promise you it will not be a fun bowl season. No.
No, not at all. Well, LeShun, we'll be back later in the week. We'll break things down as Northwestern is on the horizon. A chance of getting a victory, getting right. We'll talk more about the quarterback position. You brought up a lot of good things with that run game and the possibility maybe Padilla with some zone read. Maybe this offense can start to look a little bit better. So we'll do that throughout the week. Biz is going to stop by also later in this week also, and a lot of good things here. Breaking things down tomorrow, we get the press conferences. Of course, we'll hear from the players and then Kirk Ferentz afterwards. So plenty coming up this week here on Locked On Hawkeyes. And a big thank you again for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen today. Again, your second listen, you want to check out Locked On Sports Today. It's a great run through everything going on in the world of sports. World Series on the horizon. You got the NFL, everything happening in college football, NBA, NHL is going on right now. It's beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with the local experts and insights only the Locked On Network can provide for you. It's Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. LeShun, we'll do it again later in the week. We'll preview the matchup with Northwestern. You have a great week.
Yep. Thanks. You too.